Under the cover of darkness, humanity struck back for the first time. In the ruins of a shattered highway outside Berlin, a squad of young soldiers crawled through broken asphalt toward a lone Horde scout ship. Their leader, Corporal Hannah Weiss, pressed her ear to the cold metal hull and signaled her team to hold. For a moment, all they heard was distant thunder and the faint whir of alien drones overhead. Then, with hearts pounding, they sprang into action, breaching a panel with makeshift tools and hurling EMP grenades inside. The ship's lights flickered and died, and alien soldiers stumbled into the night, blinded by sudden silence. Elsewhere, in the deserts of Arizona, a ragtag band of engineers, led by Victor Ramos, repurposed old pipeline parts into a ramshackle tank. Though it rumbled and shook, its jury-rigged cannon punched holes in an invading foot platoon. Each explosion echoed across the canyon walls, and Victor dared to smile as his crew cheered in triumph. In the crowded streets of Rio de Janeiro, civilians formed human chains around wounded neighbors, shielding them from roaming Horde scouts. Among them, a nurse named Camila held a bleeding child close, whispering calm words even as her own hands trembled. When alien weapons opened fire, protesters threw stones and ran forward to push back, their unity forming a living shield that stunned the invaders more than any weapon could. In icy Siberia, Colonel Mikhail Petrov surveyed a frozen lake where engineers had laid cables beneath the ice. At his command, they unleashed a pulse that shattered the surface with towering waves of electricity, sending Horde walkers toppling like dominoes. As steam rose in the February air, Mikhail felt the fierce pride of his men replace the dread that had gripped them since the invasion began. Meanwhile, deep beneath the Australian outback, miners and scientists worked side by side to activate a dormant railgun buried centuries ago for reasons long forgotten. When the first test shot thundered through the tunnel and punched a hole in a hovering Horde ship above, the tremor shook the earth in countless hearts. News of these daring raids spread across the globe in an instant, carried by broken signals that volunteers frantically patched together from abandoned broadcast towers. In every language, the message was the same: humans would fight back. From Tokyo's neon ruins to the fields of Kenya, people gathered around flickering screens to watch live streams of victories both small and large. A teacher in London wept tears of relief as she saw a classroom of students cheer after watching a captured alien flag torn down. In Cape Town, a street musician played a stirring anthem on violin, notes weaving sorrow and hope into one melody. Even in places where hope had all but died, these images ignited a new fire. Governments that had been paralyzed by fear now shared intelligence freely, and rival armies formed alliances overnight. Scientists in South Korea shared schematics of anti-gravity devices captured from downed ships, while hackers in Canada broadcast intercepted Horde orders to every human network. Each act of resistance, no matter how small, became a rallying cry. Families of fallen fighters planted memorial flowers wherever battles had raged, honoring sacrifice and steeling resolve. And children who had hidden in basements for days began to paint posters with slogans of defiance and dreams of peace. As the first rays of dawn crept over battle-scarred horizons, humanity stood transformed. Fear still lingered in tired eyes, but beneath it now burned fierce determination. They had learned that unity and courage could match even the most advanced technology. With every improvised weapon and every act of solidarity, humans reclaimed a piece of their world. And though the Horde still hovered above in overwhelming numbers, that morning marked the true beginning of Earth's resistance, the first counterstrike in a war that would decide the fate of the planet. Hidden far beneath the world's surface, humanity's secret arsenal stirred to life. In a cavernous hangar carved into the Swiss Alps, Dr. Elena Ortiz watched as dormant machines hummed and lights glowed along their sleek frames. Soldiers and engineers stood at attention, awe and hope shining in their eyes. Each weapon had been built in secrecy decades ago, a failsafe in case of an unimaginable threat. Now, those silent guardians would stand between Earth and total destruction. Above ground, mining crews in South Africa raced against time. They had unearthed an alien cruiser buried beneath a diamond field, its hull scarred but intact. Led by engineer Aisha and Becky, they worked day and night to power up the vessel's fusion core. Sparks flew as they patched alien circuits with human ingenuity. When the core finally roared to life, Aisha felt tears sting in her eyes. She thought of her children at home, and she understood that this moment when human hands reclaimed alien power might save them all. In Russia, Colonel Mikhail Petrov oversaw the testing of energy harpoons fired from mountain bunkers. The first shot lit up the horizon like a shooting star, slicing through a captured Horde scout ship, drifting above Lake Baikal. The explosion echoed through frozen pines, and soldiers cheered against the cold wind. Mikhail's lips curved into a proud smile. We watched as technicians gathered fragments of the shattered ship, knowing they would study every piece to make Earth's defenses stronger still. Meanwhile, in the sun-baked deserts of Arizona, Victor Ramos and his makeshift tank crew unveiled their latest creation, a railgun mounted on a converted oil rig. When the first round thundered out and punched through a Horde transport ship, the ground trembled beneath them. Victor felt his heart pound as cheers rose around the rig. He thought of the families hiding in underground shelters, and he knew these victories would give them courage to face another day. Across the ocean in Japan, a team of coders led by Akira Saito worked in a hidden bunker under Tokyo. They had captured a Horde drone and painstakingly decrypted its software now. Those alien algorithms ran on human servers, guiding anti-gravity drones to shadow and intercept incoming invaders. As the newly programmed drones took flight, Akira watched their graceful arcs and felt his chest tighten with pride. In his mind, he saw children on nearby rooftops smiling as they watched these sleek machines defend their city. In Brazil, the people transformed factories into armor workshops. Men and women who once assembled cars now welded plates and forged shields. Among them was Maria Torres, a single mother whose son had been injured in the first attacks. She poured every ounce of skill into each piece of armor, dreaming that one day her son would wear a suit she made. Each clang of the hammer echoed her fierce love and defiance of fear. Learning from these triumphs, world leaders convened in a secure command center beneath the United Nations building. They shared blueprints and battle reports, forging a unified plan to use these superweapons at scale. When the council concluded, representatives returned to their nations carrying not just orders, but the promise of hope. Soldiers boarding transports felt a renewed sense of purpose, no longer simply fighting to survive, but to reclaim their world. As dusk fell on the third day of resistance, Earth's united defenses stood ready. Railguns, energy harpoons, and repurposed alien ships formed a protective ring around the globe. Civilians watched the sky with cautious optimism, sharing messages of solidarity on glowing screens. Mothers tucked their children in at night, whispering that tomorrow would be brighter. Fathers stood guard on rooftop watch, their eyes steady. With newfound resolve, deep in her alpine lab, Dr. Ortiz closed her notebook and looked out through reinforced windows at the stars beyond. She remembered the darkest hours when fear threatened to crush human spirit. Now, with Earth's hidden arsenal awakened and humanity's unity stronger than ever, she felt a powerful surge of belief. Whatever the Horde might throw at them next, humans had proven they could turn despair into strength. And so, with hearts steady and weapons aimed skyward, they prepared for the moment when the tide would finally break. Earth would fight back with every ounce of its courage. As dawn broke on the fourth day of humanity's fight, coordinated offensives surged across every front, proving that Earth's children could stand as one. In the ruins of Paris, Captain Isabelle Durant led a mixed battalion of soldiers and volunteers through the twisted remains of the city's Grand Boulevard. As the first railgun shell from the Swiss Alps arsenal sliced through an enemy dropship overhead, civilians cheered and joined the lines, handing out water and first-aid kits. In the African savannah, General Kojo Mensah marshaled a fleet of repurposed alien transports that glided silently above herds of grazing animals. When she ordered a surprise strike on a Horde supply convoy, the transports dove in unison, releasing a volley of energy harpoons that scattered the invader columns like fallen dominoes. Her pilots felt tears of triumph as they watched the alien vehicles erupt in flames against the wide golden plain. On the snowy steppes of Mongolia, a small group of horse-mounted fighters surprised a patrol of alien walkers. Led by Arjun Batbayar, they used the land's rolling dunes to mask their approach. When Arjun's squad fired homemade railgun pistols, the walkers toppled one by one, their heavy armor cracking like ice under a spring sun. The image of sturdy riders moving at a gallop beneath the pastel sky galvanized remote villages to send supplies and reinforcements. Mothers whispered blessings for the heroes as they loaded wheat and blankets onto their own horses, sharing hope with every beat of hooves on the cold earth. Across the Pacific, in the shattered hull of what once was Los Angeles, a young coder named Mei Lin broadcast a message that would echo around the globe. Hacking into Horde frequencies, she sent a steady stream of Earth's greatest songs. Poems and speeches, human achievements, woven into melody and words. The aliens paused. Their advance, unsure how to react to beauty they could not comprehend. Soldiers watching the feed on cracked screens felt a surge of pride as May's voice declared, "This is who we are, creators of wonder, lovers of peace, warriors of hope." In that moment, every gunner, medic, and civilian trench worker knew. They fought not just for survival, but for everything that made life worth living. In Siberia's frozen north, Colonel Mikhail Petrov again made his stand. He deployed energy harpoons and synchronized volleys that lit up the polar night like distant auroras. As the bright bolts carved paths through the darkness, stranded survivors, huddled inside ice-hardened bunkers, felt warmth in their hearts for the first time. When the last alien walker collapsed into the snow, Mikhail allowed himself a brief smile before ordering his men to press on, their breath clouding the night with steam of resolve. Meanwhile, deep beneath the Atlantic Ocean, naval engineers lit up a chain of undersea railgun emplacements. When those first projectiles thundered through the dark water and blasted a Horde cruiser's flank, shipyards in every coastal nation erupted with activity. Fishermen turned captains, turning their boats into repair vessels to refit captured alien hulls. Children on shore danced as the Voyager-class freighter, now armed with human-built cannons, returned triumphant to dock. By midday, every continent pulsed with synchronized strikes. News broadcasts restored by volunteer signals showed humans tearing down alien flags, raising Earth's banner high. In London, an elderly playwright wept as he watched a captured Horde anthem replaced with a children's choir singing Amazing Grace. In São Paulo, a street artist painted a massive mural of a human fist breaking a silver ship in half, each splash of paint cheered by passersby. Across the world, old rivals laid down grudges and clasped hands in trenches once dug against each other. As the sun set on this day of triumph, Dr. Alina Ortiz stood on the Swiss Alps balcony, watching tracer arcs from energy harpoons paint the sky. She thought of the Secret Council's first meeting when fear had threatened to drown every brave plan. Now, watching Earth's united front, she felt a surge of joy so fierce it brought tears to her eyes. Tomorrow, the Horde might regroup, but humanity had found its strength, unity born of compassion, courage forged in desperation, and a hope so bright it could never be extinguished. In the early hours of the fifth day, a small squad of human pilots slipped through the shattered defenses around Mars. They flew stolen Horde fighters sleek. Silver ships now painted with bold Earth colors, and their hearts pounded with a mix of fear and resolve. Leading them was Captain Amina Khalid, a former cargo pilot who had taught herself alien flight controls from salvaged manuals. As the convoy of 4 ships coasted past drifting debris, Amina glanced at her co-pilot, Lieutenant Jonas Petrov, whose eyes were steady but bright with tension. Neither spoke. They shared a single thought. Today they would strike at the heart of the invaders' power. Above them loomed the Horde flagship, Zarthel, a massive dreadnought bristling with weapons and glowing with alien energy. Its hull was scarred from railgun blasts fired days earlier, but it still pulsed with dark power. The human squad slipped into its outer ring, using stealth algorithms hacked by Mei Lin and her Tokyo coding team. Their consoles counted down. 20 seconds to breach, then 15. 10. With synchronized breaths, they ignited their engines and dove in a diamond formation, weaving through energy beams and dodging patrol drones. On the bridge of an orbiting transport, Admiral Zhao Kale watched the missiles streak toward the flagship and gave the order, "Engage countermeasures." But the humans were ready. Amina guided her fighter to the flagship's hangar bay doors, timing her entry to avoid the sensors where Maze Virus had disabled a key array. The bay doors hissed open, and Jonas launched their boarding pod with a sharp wink. Inside, the team of 6 engineers, soldiers, and a medic clung 2 seats as the pod slammed into the hull. Lights flashed red, and the engines groaned, but the hatch held firm. They pried it open with human-made tools and spilled onto a narrow walkway lined with alien glyphs. Every step echoed. Lieutenant Petrov raised his voice. "Stay close, and watch your corners." Their rifles glowed with blue energy harvested from Horde power cells, lighting their way. Meanwhile, above Mars, the remaining human fighters circled the Zerthiel, drawing fire away from the boarding team. Captain Amina banked sharply, her fighter's shields flaring under plasma blasts. She thought of her daughter waiting on Earth, of the bedtime stories she almost whispered over a cracked radio link. With one breath, she turned her focus to the mission. Her wingmates formed a protective screen, and together they unleashed a volley of repurposed energy missiles. The flagship's turrets sputtered and died, giving the boarding pod precious seconds before the docks sealed again. Below deck, the boarding team navigated narrow corridors toward the Central Command Core. Engineer Priya Shah hacked a control panel, her fingers dancing over alien symbols she barely understood. With a hiss of steam and a flicker of power, the lock disengaged. Sergeant Luis Morales cracked a grin, wiping sweat from his brow, just like old times. Inside the core chamber, a massive crystalline orb pulsed at the center, threads of energy weaving through metal tendrils. Dr. Elena Ortiz's voice crackled in their earpieces. "You have one shot to disrupt that core. Plant the charges and get out." Petrov nodded, and they set explosive charges at key junctions, each click echoing like the beating of a drum. Back in the corridor, alarms began to wail. The Horde crew had discovered the breach. Flashing lights turned corridors blood red, and alien soldiers raced toward the core. Priya wiped tears of tension from her eyes. "Hurry," she muttered. When the last charge was set, Luis slapped the detonator pad. The ground trembled. Through their visors, they saw the crystalline orb shatter, sending waves of energy that scrambled the flagship's systems. Outside, the human fighters felt the ship shudder as its command link severed in the hangar bay. Amina guided her fighter through collapsing bulkheads, the ship groaning around her. She caught sight of the boarding pod ejecting into space, its thrusters flaring. "Pod away," Jonas reported. As they redocked onto their own ship, the flagship's weapons went dark, and its shields melted away like mist. Amina's voice was soft when she spoke over the comm. "We did it." Back home, millions watched live feeds of the flagship's defeat, tears streaming down faces that had known only dread. By the time Earth's sun rose over battered cities, humanity had struck a blow no one thought possible. The Zerthiel drifted, powerless, a trophy of human courage and unity. In that moment, every human, from children hiding in basements to generals on command, decks felt a surge of hope, so powerful it eclipsed fear. They had pierced the enemy's heart, and now they believed they could win. On the vast plains of Siberia, under a sky colored by dawn's pale light, humanity prepared for its final stand. Soldiers from every nation formed lines of steel and hope. Among them stood Colonel Mikhail Petrov, his breath misting in the cold air, eyes steady as he surveyed the ranks. Beside him, Captain Isabel Durant checked the shields on her energy harpoon launcher, her fingers steady despite the trembling of her heart. Volunteers carried supplies of food, fuel, and letters from home, messages of love pleading for victory. In their faces shone both fear and resolve, a powerful mix that bound them together. Far beyond the human lines, the last Horde forces, massed beneath steel-colored ships, their alien shapes casting shadows across the frozen fields. The invaders moved in tight formations, their weapons glowing dimly, waiting for the signal. For a moment, the world held its breath. In the hush, before a battle, a single radio crackled to life, Kojo Mensa's voice, warm and determined, echoing across every channel. Stand tall, brothers and sisters. Today we fight not just for land, but for every tomorrow we dream of. At that moment, the fear in every chest hardened into steel. As the first railgun shot thundered from the Swiss Alps installation, the ground trembled like an angry giant. A brilliant beam of light carved across the frozen horizon, striking a horde walker and sending it crashing into the snowdrifts. Cheers erupted from the human ranks and echoed off distant mountains. Soldiers ran forward, their footsteps steady, hearts pounding in unison with the rhythm of hope. Captain Durant led her squad through a clearing of shattered walkers, her voice ringing clear, "Move up, stay in formation, for Earth." On the flanks, General Kojo's repurposed transport swooped low over the icy land. She watched through the cockpit window as her pilots fired energy harpoons that soared like bright comets. Each strike ripped through enemy armor, forcing the invaders to falter. Below, villagers and workers who had built the weapons cheered from makeshift trenches, waving scarves and flags. Their joy was a song carried by the wind, lifting spirits across the battlefield. In the center, Colonel Petrov stood on a small rise, surrounded by his command team. He watched as squads pressed forward using jagged ice spires as cover. Every time a human fell, comrades carried the wounded to safety and pushed onward. Mikhail felt grief blow through him like the cold wind, but he held fast. He thought of his wife and daughter back home, huddled in shelters, waiting to see the end of this long night. He knew he could not fail. As the sun climbed higher, its weak light glinted off broken horde machinery. Dr. Alina Ortiz's voice crackled in every ear. "Now, fire the ocean line." In an instant, undersea railgun batteries along the Arctic coast fired in deadly rhythm. Bolts of energy underwater raced toward the enemy ships at the shore, detonating with thunderous roars. Water and ice exploded into spray, drenching human defenders on the shoreline, but filling them with fierce triumph. The invading fleet broke, its formation shattered like glass under a hammer. Seizing the moment, Captain Durant's squad charged forward, racing across the frozen ground toward the nearest dropship. Their energy harpoons fired in rapid succession, disabling its engines. One by one, the ship's landing legs buckled, and it rolled onto its side. Isabel stepped close and raised the Earth banner high above her head. Her voice carried across the plains, "For Earth." Thousands echoed her cry, a single voice. In millions. In the final minutes, Colonel Petrov ordered his forces to converge on the remaining horde ship. Human fighters from Mars and Tokyo streaked across the sky, their silhouettes bold against the bright sun. On the ground, volunteers laid out first aid stations and distributed blankets, ready for survivors once the battle ended. And then, as the last horde vessel surrendered, the world exhaled. Silence fell over the plain, but it was not the silence of defeat. It was the stillness of dawn after a storm. Soldiers dropped to their knees and wept, embraced by friends and strangers alike. Colonel Petrov allowed tears to run free as he thought of the cost of lives lost, of fears faced head-on. Yet in that moment, sorrow and joy intertwined, creating a new force, stronger than any weapon, the unbreakable spirit of humanity. As the sun set on the battlefield, its golden light spread across snow and steel, painting everything in warm hues. Survivors gathered around small fires, singing songs of home and future. Captain Durant looked up at the stars, imagining days when children would play beneath them without fear. She smiled through her tears. The Galactic Horde was defeated, not through any single weapon, but through unity, courage, and love. With that knowledge burning bright in every heart, humanity rose ready to rebuild, to heal, and to step into a new era of hope. As the dust settled and the last echo of battle faded, Earth's survivors stood together on the open field, hearts heavy yet full of hope. Soldiers lowered their weapons, and civilians emerged from makeshift shelters, blinking in the soft light of a new dawn. Among them, Colonel Mikhail Petrov stood tall, his uniform stained with snow and sweat, but his eyes shining with pride. He watched as Captain Isabel Durant embraced a young volunteer who had carried messages between units, both of them trembling with relief. In that moment, rank and duty fell away. Every human was simply a brother or sister who had fought for the same cause. Back in the secret command center beneath the United Nations building, Dr. Alina Ortiz and her council gathered around a large holomap of the globe. Representatives from every nation stood side by side, sharing stories of courage and tears of loss. When Petrov's face appeared on the screen, the room erupted in applause. Ortiz tapped the console, and a message scrolled across every city's network. We are one people. We rebuild as one world. As officers and diplomats nodded, a new plan began to take shape, one not of war, but of recovery, education, and unity. In villages once torn by fear, children ran through the streets, their laughter a sound more precious than any victory horn. They carried wooden swords and paper flags, pretending to chase off phantom invaders. Parents smiled and watched tears glisten in their own eyes, remembering nights when those streets lay silent under alien shadow. Now they spoke of gardens to plant and schools to rebuild, of art festivals and music concerts to celebrate their shared strength. Across the continents, factories that once made weapons were repurposed to produce tools, medical equipment, and supplies for rebuilding infrastructure. In Brazil, Maria Torres opened a workshop where she taught her injured son and other young people to weld steel beams for new bridges. In India, Sanjay led teams to restore power plants, ensuring that homes and hospitals would never go dark again. Volunteers from every background worked side by side, forging bonds deeper than any alliance formed in peacetime. High above, the sky was once again filled with human-made aircraft cargo planes delivering food, medical drones mapping damaged cities, and slowly, sheets of blue solar panels drifting down for installation. In Mumbai, a group of engineers celebrated as they connected the final panel to the first new microgrid. When light sparked back into a fallen neighborhood, cheers rose so loud they could be heard for miles. Mira, the schoolteacher who had tracked invasion announcements on her phone, wept with joy as her classroom's lights flickered on for the first time since the crisis began. Commemorations began in every nation. Monuments rose where the fiercest battles had been fought, a statue of a soldier and a civilian holding hands in Mogadishu, murals of rainbow ribbons woven through broken alien armor in Sydney, and a cascade of candles forming the shape of Earth on the frozen steppes of Siberia. Each memorial told a story of sacrifice and of the belief that no force could extinguish the human spirit. Survivors laid flowers, recited poems, and held moments of silence, honoring those who had given everything to defend their homes. As evening fell on the 7th day after the Great Counterstrike, humanity gathered for a global broadcast. On screens large and small, from skyscrapers in Dubai, to handheld devices and remote villagers' faces of leaders, scientists, soldiers, and civilians appeared, each offering a simple message. Thank you. We will never forget. Then, in unison, millions sang an anthem, newly composed by musicians who had recorded hope-filled chords in underground studios. Their voices rose through city squares and quiet hamlets alike, carrying melody and harmony as symbols of unity. Colonel Petrov watched the performance from a mountain ridge. Standing beside Captain Durant and Dr. Ortiz, he felt neither pride nor victory, but a deep, steady warmth in his chest. Around them, the world had changed forever, borders blurred by shared struggle, differences healed by compassion, and fear replaced by determination to protect each other. As the final notes of the anthem faded, Petrov looked to the stars, imagining peaceful journeys to new world's destinations, chosen not by conquest, but by curiosity and goodwill. Then he turned to his companions and spoke softly, "We are ready." And with that, humanity stepped forward together into the bright future. They had won with courage, unity, and love.